And if you need it for the...
Oh.
Wow.
This is a different Daniel Greene than we're used to. This is Daniel B. Greene.
Oh, yeah. You gotta add the B. That's how you know I'm in author mode. The B is established.
The B, what is it? Is it like Buttercup?
Yeah, actually, it's Daniel Buttercup Greene. I'm surprised you got that right. No one ever guesses that.
I'm a pretty good guesser. I figured we could just start talking about Breach of Peace, BOP, as the young kids are calling it.
Do I get a point for every question I answer right?
Okay. Each point is like 1/100th of a penny.
Oh, damn it. All right. Well, all right. This is going to be a long interview because I need to at least make $1. So
I know. Well, congrats, Breach of Peace. Thank you. Oh, yeah, hold that, please. Breach of Peace is blowing up right now. I just checked, like right before we recorded, it's 143 in the Kindle store currently. I know it was like 52. It's doing amazing. Congrats. How does it feel? That's my question.
I haven't processed it, if I'm being honest. Like I got told I was #1 in military fantasy, and I was like, oh, that's a great subgenre to be #1 in. And then I was told I was #1 in horror fantasy, and I was like, I don't think I'm writing a horror book, but cool. I didn't categorize it at that. And then I was told it was #1 in epic fantasy, and I was like, no way. And I started watching it rise, and throughout the whole first day, it kept rising and rising and rising. I couldn't sleep that night because I just kept checking. Like, I don't want to miss it being in its top spot. And around like 1 a.m., it started going back down. I was like, all right, cool, I can sleep.
Time to rest.
Yeah, time to actually like not watch because if I watch it go down all the way, I'll start getting sad. So I stopped watching at that point.
Time to sleep.
But it felt very weird. I genuinely, like, people have been laughing at me for saying this. I didn't think I'd sell that many copies. I didn't think that many people would be interested in my book because I thought, you know, people watch me for reviews, and watching the review guy try to write a book, it's like, that's not going to be good.
I laughed at you for saying that too. I watched your stream and I was just like, ha. But
I thought you were about to say you laughed at me for like writing a book. I thought you were about to be like, I laughed at you for writing a book.
No.
But yeah, it's been unbelievable. Of course, there's the imposter syndrome kicking in like really hard, but you just gotta ignore that.
As somebody who's you know privileged enough to have read it multiple times, I have to say that it's awesome. It's really awesome, and everyone, they have a lot of good coming to them on March 30th, just saying. Well,
you read early. Did I get you the final draft? You read it before the prose got like touched up and made better and everything. So hopefully it's better now. I'd hate for you to get the final version and be like, nah, the unedited was where it's at. Like
unedited, that's no. Yeah, I've read. Yeah, you sent me the new version and I read that. It's great on all. I mean, the story was, you know, consistent through everything, and it's just, yeah, the prose is terrific. You know.
Thank you. I still say pros are, so that's where I'm at prose wise.
I've been meaning to fight you about that for a long time. I'm sure a lot of people do.
It sounds better in my mind, and I can't make the switch. My brain like refuses to, so I keep saying it in videos, and every time the people come in, like, what are you doing?
You got to stand for what you believe in.
Totally.
Yeah. Was there anything that surprised you about writing Breach of Peace? Also, what is your writing process?
So the surprising thing, everyone told me that writing is not the hardest part. And in my cocky brain, I was like, that's not true. Writing's the hardest part. No, self-publishing is the hardest part by a lot, by a huge margin. Writing was difficult. Don't get me wrong. I hit writer's block. I had all that stuff. I mean, it took me months to write 140 pages. It's not easy to, write. But self-publishing, it's not a Herculean task in the sense that anything is specifically very hard to do. You just have to do a million things. You have to find the distributor you want. You have to upload. You have to edit. You have to edit again. 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 I could repeat that for an hour. You need to, figure out, okay, the distributor I chose is going to handle these channels, but I need to individually upload and handle all these other channels it's not going to handle so that people can get it in these other means. If you want to do an audiobook, whole other set of tasks. And then once you've finished all this, you're going to find big mistakes in your book and you need to re-upload your book everywhere repeatedly. It's a death by 1,000 cuts situation, and you just need to keep moving forward. It's really amazing how hard self-publishing is. But at the end of it, you get to keep that much more of the money you make, so worth it?
Yeah, I'd say that's worth it. That's pretty awesome. I can't imagine how much work is going into that. Plus, you're still keeping up with your YouTube schedule the whole time.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason there's been a lot less book reviews for me recently. It's because the amount I've been able to read is way down because I'm just focusing on getting my book out. Fortunately, bad movies exist, and I've started filling my schedule with watching and reviewing bad movies. So that's been great, and people have had a wonderful time with that.
That's perfect. I'm curious about how you found your cover artist.
So I reached out to a couple different artists I'm kind of friendly with to figure out where they got their covers done, and they sent me artists they'd work with. And I got sent Felix Ortiz, and I started looking through his work and just immediately was blown away. I mean, the guy's work with color and just vibrant textures, the way, I don't deserve a cover this nice. I got my favorite part of my book is now the cover. That and Michael Kramer and K. Redding narrating. It's not my book, which I don't know what that says about me. And I would say the turnaround with him was also unbelievable. I think it was a total from 2 months from when I first contacted him to when he sent me the final version. He's fantastic. I can't recommend him enough if someone's out there looking for a book cover. Felix Ortiz is, there's a reason he won the Stabby for best cover artist right now. He's brilliant.
That's awesome.
Love working with him.
I feel like people are curious about where you stand on pantsing versus outlining.
So I tried both. I approached this book in 2 different directions, or this novella. And the first time I tried to just write it, I just tried to burn through the whole thing and get it done. And that kind of ended up very messy, but it was my first draft. I then kind of went back through and took all the major plot elements that I knew I needed to hit, cut out a lot of the fat, and then decided what I needed to add in to make these plot elements work better. It's actually kind of how I approach the world building too. I just was like, here's the world I want. Okay, now let's go through top to bottom repeatedly and start kind of fully painting out and texturizing what I want this to be all the way through. It was a long process, and I'm still developing the world, honestly. Like every author who's currently writing their series is still developing their world. You don't finish. And it's the most fun part, honestly. I think writing is fun, and that's why I'm really looking forward to getting deeper into book 2. I have book 2 50% done.
Wow.
And so it's really great to getting back into it after I handle getting this in people's hands. My biggest advice for people who are trying to figure out if they're prancer or plotter is to just try and get through it in one go. And if that didn't feel right to you, you can still use what you tried as an outline of sorts and then be an outliner from there.
Absolutely. That's interesting what you say about your world building. Do you keep a list of information, country, all that kind of stuff?
Yes, I kind of have a document that is the most grotesque, unorganized thing ever. By the way, I also use Campfire, which has been they're a sponsor. I don't want to bring up a sponsor on a channel, but they are genuinely an amazing tool, and they're using them to help organize my world has been a game changer because I do have this giant ugly document, and then I've been slowly piecing that into Campfire over time. And that really helps. Honestly, some of their tools are more useful than others, but the most useful for me has been keeping all the factions organized that way. Because if you have an idea for a kingdom over here and you come back to that kingdom 3 months later and you're trying to scroll through your notes to figure out what you wanted to do, it's just time consuming. So having something like that, it sounds like I'm trying to make money here, but it's real. It's a nice tool to have.
Campfire, sponsor me now.
I do.
Oh, quick question. And this is something I have to ask this because my wife wanted to know if you're moving again because you're being chased by the law, or if you committed any kind of crime, are the feds catching up to you? That's what we want to know. I've
had issues with people finding my address before and things like that. That's actually a motivator for me moving before. Fortunately, this time me moving is actually just I want to move. I like my apartment. My apartment's really nice, but I'm moving into a more permanent location and forcing myself to put down roots. I have moved more than 5 times in the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I just am like, okay, you are not a functioning adult. You don't have roots anywhere. Do it. So I'm making myself move again so that I can be a real human being who's tied to a location.
So basically the feds have not caught up to you. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm the Zodiac killer. So,
Hold on. Can you say that one more time?
No.
I'm curious about how you feel about like inserting like political or like moral questions in your book. Like, do you feel like it's a conscious thing that you try to do, or is it more focusing on the story, whatever enters?
I will never tell someone they are right or wrong for putting politics in their book or not. You're welcome to do either way. You're welcome to, inject as much as you'd like or be completely, apolitical in your writing. So I'm not going to answer that question in a way where it's like yes or no. But for me personally, there's a lot of politics in my book. Very Orwellian. I'm heavily pulling from Orwell. And I kind of wanted to create, like, what if the religious cult took over? What if the whole world is run by a god and there's not really free will anymore? Because if God is sitting there going, do this, you're going to go do that. Is that right? Is that wrong? That's kind of what I'm exploring. So that's the big thesis, pretty much, of my politics, my religion, is you are following the main characters who are part of this empire. They are religious zealots. And it's kind of an exploration of what is the mindset of good people who are in a situation like that. Can you be a good person in a situation like that? And so I've been doing a lot of reading into, the average everyday life of someone who is in Nazi Germany. If you're just walking in the street, but you're in Nazi Germany, what's your life like? Same thing with Manifest Destiny, which is one of the most evil concepts in history. The idea that it's your religious right to own this land, that you can push whoever out of the way. That's something these people believe in. And some of the most horrific instances in history have all come from stuff like that. It's been a very depressing series of research, but it's also been fascinating to see how simple ideas can be put in people's minds. And then those people will go do awful, awful, awful things.
Yeah. I mean, for 140, 160 pages, it really packs a lot of interesting, thought-provoking ideas. I mean, it leaves a lot to think about. And I really like how it doesn't like bring some kind of simple resolution. It really just presents a lot of interesting questions.
Yeah. And in a lot of situations like this, where you have an Orwellian type government and you have a military that crosses lines into civilian matters, what ends up happening with the police? That's actually something that's been a problem in history, where if the military's jurisdiction is all consuming, what happens when the police and the military start conflicting? Are the police truly representatives of the people, or are they another arm of the government? And it's another idea I like to look into, because I've found, people who typically join up with law enforcement, this is a very controversial thing right now for many reasons, but they either are very abusive of their power or they're very genuinely trying to help their communities. There's kind of two sides of, people who want to get into that line of work. And so and not in this book quite as much, but in the next book especially, there's going to be a lot of, who are the kind of people who try and put themselves in these shoes, who want to be in an authoritative position.
Right. It's really fascinating because the inspectors are like elevated to godlike status. And it's like, what are the consequences when like a police force is treated that way?
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, there's so much, raising of people up in cults and religion. There's so much of this person is above you now because of what they've been assigned. And I've, for my whole life, found that to be a very toxic and awful idea. No one person is better than anyone else. I mean, this is coming from someone who's, I'm an agnostic. I'm not someone who, I believe we're all just monkeys who figured stuff out. And so I don't really believe one person is ever truly better than another. So from my perspective, going into that idea of elevating an individual in a cult-like sense was really interesting, because as someone who's never really had religion much in their life, I've always been fascinated by it. I mean, I've studied it a lot. I took a lot of classes on religion in college, not because it's related to my major. It's because it's the most shaping force in our history. Like, religion has directed human history more than pretty much any other factor. You can't really debate that. It's just from the Crusades to even World War II, religion played a role.
Well, you did a really fantastic job presenting these ideas, and it's definitely a lot to think about. I'm wondering, you talked about George Orwell, but I'm wondering if there were other like conscious influences you were thinking of, like either fantasy writers or outside the fantasy genre, or
probably surprising some people is not much from Jordan or Sanderson, because I love those guys. They're two of my favorites.
I was surprised. I was definitely surprised when I read it.
It's just I don't find their writing style to be what makes me love them. I think they have really good, solid writing style, but it's not. There's no flair to it that makes the factor that pulls me into their stories, which makes the rest of their stories all the more impressive. But for me, I had a tweet a while ago that got retweeted by Stephen King that was talking about how much I love the way he writes. He kind of has this he has this blue collar beauty to him, where he's able to use very simple writing to explain and delve into complex ideas and emotions, especially emotions like fear and revulsion. And I wanted to really pull from that. I also definitely, of course, respect and love Abercrombie's writing style. I'll never claim to write as good as these people, but it's what I tried to have influenced me. It's what I tried to go out of my way to pull from. I hope I did it to a somewhat decent effect, is all I can really say. I found my prose upon going back and reading the book the best I can, because you can never really read your own book, if that makes sense. But I found my prose to be a bit basic, to be a bit bland. And it's something I'm going to be working on, but I hope there's enough flavor there so it's not just, flavorless for people.
No, I think there is a lot of flavor, and I really see the Stephen King influence, definitely, especially in certain scenes that are very dark, twisted. Not going to get into spoilers or anything, but just very, it's very immersive, and the details are sort of like how Stephen King is very focused on just there's some disturbing imagery in there. I was really shocked to see that influence there.
So people are calling this grimdark, and I don't agree, because I don't think Stephen King is grimdark, but he's willing to go into graphic detail. And what I studied most when I was going through his writing specifically for this was how he forces your gaze, how he makes you as the reader look at something. And then he can use that, a small detail like a bodily fluid or something really revolting, to then your mind fills in the rest. You will expand the rest of the situation. Specifically, this book opens with a crime scene. And so there's really graphic detail about what was done to these people. And there's one scene in a bedroom where I probably could have cut that whole scene, but it was an exercise for me of just trying to actually paint a picture of something gruesome, and talking about someone being torn apart. And it's about, okay, how can I really affect a reader's emotion? And I ended up kind of liking what I accomplished, so I kept it in there because I thought it was a emotional enough scene in terms of showing how these characters can handle watching this happen to an adult, where they aren't that revolted, where they watch it before happen to a child, and that really turns they are revolted by it. I wanted to keep it in because I think it does a good amount of character work for the inspectors, and it also was a nice exercise that I think turned out well. I mean, this book is an exercise for me in a lot of ways. It's my first ever thing I really wrote all the way through that's a novella, and I think there's going to be sequences. I think if you pay close attention, you can go, oh, Daniel is working on this in that sequence.
Right. Yeah. And I could also tell that too, having read the first draft and then the final draft, those visceral elements, especially like you were talking about in the bedroom, that was expanded upon. And it's interesting how you don't classify it as grimdark. And I don't think it's grimdark either, because I feel like there's a kind of tone, sort of like how you talk about how Stephen King isn't grimdark. I feel like he's not grimdark because overall there's a hopefulness in Stephen King's books. He's not a pessimistic writer, and I don't think you are either. No,
I think Stephen King, and I tried to pull from this as well, he has a belief in people. People will fight for good. There's never everyone's bad. There's never, and I think one of the core elements to grimdark is a belief that people are selfish and they're self-serving. And that's what really qualifies grimdark for me, is that every character you come across, or at least almost every single one, especially ones in power, are evil in some way, or they're gray. Very rarely in a grimdark story does someone who is truly good take the spotlight. If they are, they get corrupted. I don't believe that about people personally. I think grimdark's actually less realistic. I think history and psychology has shown us that most people, at least in their own twisted minds, if they're doing evil things, are trying to be good, do good. The Ted Bundys, the Jeffrey Dahmers, those are extreme outliers in reality, in my opinion.
No, yeah, I agree, absolutely. Obviously, there's also the Arthur Conan Doyle influences, which I could tell you were having a lot of fun in the procedural stuff, which was just very entertaining to read. I
don't want to pull from his writing style, because I genuinely don't love Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's writing style, but his specific writing of mystery is the greatest that there's ever been, and I will fight about that any day. And so there is a character in this who is my twisted version of Sherlock, where he's he's an ass. He's not the main character. He's kind of a secondary character, I would say, to Chlid. I say my own character's name wrong. Isn't that great? Kate Redding says it right. If you listen to the audiobook, she says it right. And I wanted to show what I thought a real Sherlock would be like if they were put in a situation where they were working in a religious cult like this, if they were someone who somewhat believed in it and also didn't. Like, I think people who have that level of intelligence, they are innately very sad, and they are also very innately disrespectful of boundaries. Because the people I've found in my life who are, I have a couple of friends who are far more intelligent than me. They are very smart. And I have found that they're the kind of people in conversation will just say a thing they know is true. And it's very cutting. It's very beyond what your normal person would say, but you know it's honest and it's real. So you're like, yeah, right there.
I hear you. And I really love getting to see that character's point of view, because you can see that, you know, he's not trying to be an asshole. It's just the way his brain is wired.
Yeah. And I also didn't want to do the disrespectful thing of making him like some shallow representation of a disability or something that's not. He's not disabled. He's just not socially functioning. As someone who did struggle a lot, you know, socially getting to learn how to do that, because I was homeschooled for a long time, then I was thrown into public schools. I had to learn how to socialize at a later age. I know what that feeling is like. I wasn't disabled socially in any way. I was just I didn't know how. And I kind of just brought that into that character. That same feeling I had in 8th grade, I put into this grown-ass man because it just kind of felt right.
Right. There's also a lot of comedy, I noticed. And, you know, reading it again, I was like, there's actually a lot of funny moments. I especially love the officer shits little internal dialogue that Chapman has. Do you consciously think like, I need to put a joke in here or lighten things up, or is it just how your brain works?
I 100% believe writing humor is the most difficult thing to do great. It's okay. You can do it well, easily enough, but doing great humor is not something I'll even strive to do. Like, I think there are 3 authors I can think of who every single joke they write lands. That's it. Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett, and no, I'm just going to give it to those 2 in terms of 100% of people, 100% of jokes they write, knocking it out of the park. Beyond that, I think writing humor for me, it just came down to, does it feel right for the character to say this in that moment? Yes, put it in. And I don't think I ever did anything hilarious. I just did small moments because it's all I could really manage. And I didn't want to push beyond that. There was a line where I had 2 inspectors entering a market, and one inspector looks at another and goes, "Go left," and one goes, "Right." And then he walks left, and it was like, he was making a dumb joke. And everyone I showed that line to went, "Take it out, that's bad." And I was like, all right, fine. And that was where I realized, okay, don't put just jokes in. Put in character-based moments where it makes sense for some kind of humor to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some great moments like that. And
thank you.
Yeah, I really love the characters. I'm curious if you plot out your character development, or if you just, you know, feel it as you go along.
So Khlid's the only character where I really felt like a need to have development happen in the story. Everyone else is pretty set in their ways. And that's actually something I think is a problem sometimes, where people force development to happen to a character that doesn't make sense. If someone's a 30, 40-year-old man and they're going about their day and they're going like, yeah, even if extreme circumstances happen to them, it doesn't always make sense for them to change throughout that day. Only the main character I felt really was someone who was going to be broken apart and be different by the end of this story. So I think some people, and I'm ready to have the criticism to say this is kind of more one-dimensional characters in some aspects, and I think they're right. But that's also what I was going for. Everyone but the main character is pretty much going to stay who they are, because to me, I didn't want to force something that felt unnecessary, especially when I'm so page condensed and I need to just get to the ending without any fat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not writing a 400-page book. I'm curious about, and I don't know how much you can tell us or how much you know about the Lawful Times trilogy, and what we could maybe expect from sequels.
I think I'll definitely do better the second book. And that's not to say this first book is bad. It's very amazing. It's very surprising how much you can tell your faults just after having one completed work. Once you really are saying, okay, this is my book, it's done, it's been edited, I'm proud of it, I like it, and then you read it through, you'll still like it, you'll still be proud of it. And so far the reviews I've gotten have been positive, but you will be your biggest critic and you'll see where you fell short. So I hope for the next book, I'll improve on those aspects. In terms of the story, I think the best thing that I can say is this mystery is going to hopefully impress people. You are not getting all the answers in book 1, and what is going to be shown by the end of book 3 will, I hope, entice people to pick up the actual main novel I'm working on as well. Because if you finish this book, you've actually met the main character of that novel. And that's something that I think people will be surprised at who that turns out to be.
That's really exciting. I'm very, very excited to read those. To wrap up our section on writing here, my questions about writing is, do you have any tips for people starting out on their first work, on their first book?
Get an editor. Even if you don't plan on releasing it, even if you just are writing something for yourself, keep putting it in the hands of someone who professionally will go through it and tell you objectively what is wrong, who's not your friend, who's not trying to be nice to you, will be an amazing directional push. It'll show you where you need to work. So going online, and you can find people who will do this for less than $100. They'll go through a novella and do it for less than $100. I think is a truly worthwhile endeavor. I certainly really knew where I needed to work on my prose after I got the first couple rounds of editing done.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious about how you've been able to balance writing your books and doing your work on YouTube.
So I recently pulled back from doing 7 days a week videos to 5 days a week videos. And if I hadn't done that pullback, I would not have been able to write this book, period. Also, I am a workaholic. I am a self-confessed, in therapy for it, literally, a workaholic who is trying to not do this as much. So that is a big factor into how I was able to do this was, I like to work 12 hours a day or 16, and I will wake up and go to bed and just do it again. My friends have been great in getting me to try and stop this. So that's been helping me pull back. But my genuine advice to people who look at what I am doing and say, how can I do all of that? Is don't. It's not mentally healthy. It's not sustainable. It's why I've had to skip days and just tweet out, hey, I need a mental health day, because I'm just so burnt. I can't do anything but just lay in bed and try and recover. So there's things happening behind the scenes that are not healthy. That's all I can say, but I'm getting better. But for people who are running smaller booktube channels and want to put something out, one, start writing and get your audience involved. Put that pressure on yourself to tell your audience what you're doing so that you will then keep going. I know that sounds like a lot of pressure, but that will keep you writing. And on top of that, if you want a booktube channel that's going to make it right now, your personality has to be genuine. That's all I have to say. I don't care if you're shy. I don't care if you're outgoing. I don't care if you're funny or serious. Don't force yourself to be something else. Just really put yourself at the face of the channel and be genuine. Don't lie about your opinions to try and please people, even if you lose subs for doing it. If you say you hate Lord of the Rings and lose 50 subs one day, that's fine, because another 50 saw what you said and they respected your honest opinion. They're going to trust you and come back to you. That's real. I mean, that's the biggest advice I can give you.
That's great. I think people are so drawn to your channel because you are willing to take those unpopular opinions sometimes.
6 of Crows is bad.
Well, I think the tip about if you're writing and doing YouTube, I think that's good advice. Although for myself, it is scary to just say like, hey, I'm writing and it's going to come out at a certain point, to set those expectations. I've been afraid to say stuff like that because it's like,
well, what my experience is, people were patient because it was over 2 years ago that I said I was going to start working on a book. And I never was getting like angry comments saying like, go faster. Most people, surprisingly, just don't care. Most people are like, that's whatever. That's fine. Occasionally you'll get a ping that's like, hey, are you still working on that? And if so, great. It's really going to be, the pressure's internal. It's going to be you yelling at yourself. And that's sometimes what people need. So that's why I say it. To be honest, though, your audience isn't going to pressure you much unless you're bringing it up all the time.
I think your audience is just has been awesome, especially around the release of this book. I mean, everyone's psyched and very positive, and I just think you've built like an amazing community with your channel.
I love them. I mean, I used to think it was so annoying when I'd see YouTubers be like, I love my audience. They mean the world to me. Thank you. I'm like, you don't know your audience, but you kind of get to know your audience. It eventually forms kind of into this being that you're like, I know my audience likes this. I know they don't like that. And of course you're speaking in generalities, but you do genuinely end up getting to know your audience, and what they can do for you is amazing. I mean, people say like, oh, it's amazing Daniel interviewed Brandon Sanderson. No, my audience got me that interview. My audience got me my interview with Joe Abercrombie. Those people don't care about me. They care about my platform and my audience and what they've been shown to do. So when I see, you know, other authors tweeting out like, oh, Daniel boosted my sales, I didn't do anything. My audience did.
Right.
So that's something I fully believe in, and I'm grateful for them every day. I'm occasionally not grateful when they try to like find my information, but you know, those are the members we try to cut out.
Those are the stray people. Yeah, we don't talk about them. I just have a few like short, fun, random questions if you're down for answering them. Do you know your Myers-Briggs personality type?
I just looked it up because you told me you were going to ask me that. I think it was like INFB. Does that sound right? Is that a thing? Is it INFB?
INFB?
Is it B or P?
P.
It's INFP. There we go.
That's,
oh no, it's there's a J in there because I'm judgmental as hell. That's
INFJ.
INFJ. There it is.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, cool. I think basically the difference between INFP and INFJ is that INFJs are less indecisive.
I'm very decisive. I decide I'm going to do something, I do it. So that makes sense.
That does make sense. I'm an INFP, so I am like the most indecisive person.
If you ever need to make up your mind about something, just text me. I'll give you an answer just right away. I'll just immediately decide for you and respond and be like, this is what you need to do.
You heard it, folks. If you ever need to figure something out, text Daniel Greene's number at 52. It's worth a shot.
This is for you, Jacob. It's an exclusive offer.
Exclusive. Got it. This might be a silly question, but I am curious as to how you will approach it. Who would win in a fight, Khalid or Kaladin Stormblessed?
Khalid has a gun. And as my recent video shows, I have a lot of faith in guns. But Kaladin has an insane healing factor, as well as just is so far beyond trained what she is. I mean, she's very physically fit. There's a scene where she beats someone up by just slamming him into a wall repeatedly. Khalid is into fitness. She's built, but yeah, Kaladin would wipe the floor with her, no question. She might shoot him a couple times, so he'd be upset, but that's all she'd manage.
Yeah, I think she would make him pretty upset. I think you answered most of my questions, and I really appreciate you doing this and talking about the book. This was an awesome experience, so thank you so much.
Thank you. You're a great interviewer, and if you guys have not subscribed to Man Carrying Things, he's carrying things. Subscribe. Help him carry more things. That's the whole point of this.
Thanks, man. Well, awesome. Thank you so much.